the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 143 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 69 of A Clash of Kings. That's Bran 7.
Final chapter.
The final chapter.
Here we are. Anyway, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, cover some relevant news and listener correspondence, and give you a quick summary of where everybody stands at the end of the second book.
Right.
Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. As I just said, this is it for Clash of Kings.
I know.
I
know.
And I know we're taking some time off after this book, a couple weeks, and we were just talking before we started recording, and I know you very much need a breather from all kinds of things. I believe you were just talking about when you got home from work, and some of the times were in the wee hours of the AM.
I've had a long week, yes. Some of it is self-induced. I mean, there's a lot of drinking and partying going on, but it has been... I've been a day ahead all week as well. You know, like when you think it's a day further on than you actually are.
Oh.
So today is Thursday, and
yes.
I was absolutely sure it was Friday when I woke up this morning. I was convinced.
That's how long hours you've been working. You thought you worked a whole extra day.
Exactly. It certainly isn't the extra sleep, because I'm short of sleep, that is for sure. I ache all over. I've hardly done anything exercise-wise, but I ache all over just from the lack of sleep. So, my brother on the family call last week was showing us. He's bought a really nice drone to do like aerial footage of the place he runs in France.
Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah, and it's got a cool feature. You send it up, and it will film in a circle, focusing on the same point.
Oh yes, right.
So he was doing you know that kind of thing, and he did it, and he showed us the video, and it goes around in a circle until it hits the tree and gets stuck in the tree. And I'm pretty sure he didn't actually have to do a live commentary, but he does a voiceover where he goes, "Oh God!" And he said it got stuck like, how high in this tree? He said 30 meters. What's that? Like 90 feet up in this tree?
That's a big tree.
Oh, it's a big tree. Yeah. So he said it was a real pain to get it down. He said he was risking life and limb getting it back down.
I'm sure. How do you get something out of a 90-foot tree?
It had an altimeter, so it told him how far off the ground he was. He was like, oh, great.
A lot of those drones have avoidance detection. You know, they sense something coming and don't go that way. I guess he didn't get that particular model.
He said he read in the thing afterwards, it said, if there's a tree near the place where you're going to do the circle, start at the tree. Don't leave that to the end in case...
Now, he's a former firefighter, right? So maybe he has access
to... Yeah, the climbing ladders thing, yeah.
A very long ladder or something.
He did say the tree was surrounded by like a thorn bush, and he said if he fell to his death, he figured he would never be found.
Fall into it. Never be seen again.
Yeah. Let us get down to business one final time. How do we leave Bran Stark? Last we saw of Bran, which was a whopping 23 chapters ago, There's been a lot going on at King's Landing since then.
Yeah.
He was coming to terms with the new realities of Winterfell. You see, the last time we actually saw Bran, we saw Bran. So it was actually when he was coming to terms with what's going on at Winterfell. He was being held hostage by Theon, and his Ironborn were in charge. Since then, he's escaped with the help of Osha, the Reeds, and Hodor. But seemingly he'd been killed along with his brother Rickon by Theon. But we then later discovered that Theon had lied about that and had in fact murdered the two sons of a local miller who were of an age with the princes. So we don't know where Bran is. So why don't we give the summary of this one?
I think we might be about to find out where Bran is.
Well, okay. Right this second we don't know.
Well, Summer is roaming the woods near Winterfell with Shaggy Dog. The air is thick with smoke and the screams of horses, dogs, and men. The smell of blood and burned meat makes him salivate. At one point, in the flames, he sees a dragon and bares his teeth, but the next moment it's gone. He heads toward the castle, smelling no living man. Shaggy follows. They stop to kill a dying horse, and after a brief fight, and a reminder to Shaggy that Summer is the alpha, They both eat their fill.
Now he feels the pull of the dark place. He struggles against it. He's a wolf, and it is a place for blind men. He howls and resists, but the pull is too strong. He starts to hear his name being called. Bran, that is, not Summer. Bran awakens to utter darkness. It is Mira Reed calling his name. They are in the crypts of Winterfell, surrounded by Bran's ancestors, of whom he knows the stories, some good, some bad. Gradually, each of his companions speak up. Hodor, Jojen, Osha, Rickon.
Bran tells them what he's seen of Winterfell through Summer's eyes. They're wary, but their supplies are dwindling, so they need to venture out. They gear up, Osha armed with a sword that Mickon made for Eddard's tomb. The door to the outside is blocked and Osha can't open it, but Hodor applies himself and gets it open enough for them to get out. It's daytime, but the castle is deserted and covered in ash. Various parts have crumbled. Some fires still burn, but the stone walls themselves appear as solid as ever.
There's death all around, people, dogs, horses. Osha curses whoever did it, and Bran blames Theon. But Osha points out a few contradictory pieces of evidence. Theon's horse, the Bolton sigil, dead Ironborn, and so on. They are joined by Summer and Shaggy, which improves Rickon's mood considerably. They forage what food they can. Ramsay Snow's destruction was pretty wanton, so there's a fair bit left for the needy.
The wolves sniff something and race for the Godswood. It's relatively undamaged, some burned pines on the periphery, but the heart is untouched. The people follow the wolves and find Maester Luwin. He's still just alive, but mortally wounded. He's thrilled to see the boys again. He knew that the dead Bran wasn't really Bran. The muscles in the legs weren't right. He tells Osha that she needs to split the boys up. Too much risk in traveling together.
They discuss where they might go, but Luwin only knows where to avoid. The Dread Fort, Deepwood Mart, Moat Cailin, Torrhen Square, all under enemy control. He laments the folly of the war, with winter so near. He asks one last boon of Osha. She understands and sends the others away. When she returns to the party, she's decided that she will take Rickon and Shaggy and travel the King's Road, possibly to White Harbour or Last Hearth. Hodor and the Reeds will head to the Wall with Bran and Summer. Rickon is distraught, but Osha has no time for his foolishness. As Bran leaves Winterfell, he thinks that it is not dead, just broken like him. While its ancestors are below, the roots will remain.
That's quite the list of places to avoid that Luwin lists.
Yes. It is handy, though, that the King's Road sort of goes between them all, you know.
Right.
It's like, stick to the one big road in the north and you'll be fine. Just don't go off it.
Yeah. So Summer proves to be the alpha, which...
Bran is the big brother.
He's got a person's brain in there.
Well, that too, yeah. Although, actually, I've got to say, as a person, if Shaggy tried to attack me for the horse flesh, I probably would let him, because I'm a person and he's a giant direwolf.
Right.
I'm not sure that being human actually makes you more alpha in that situation.
I just, I always think of Shaggy as being like so wild and savage. It's, it's kind of a shocking reminder that that Summer is actually the alpha between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's actually the opening scene is actually kind of a good example of how brothers operate. They're exploring 1 minute, then they're fighting the next minute, and then they're making up, and Summer's licking the blood off of Shaggy's fur. Being
friendly and sweet to each other, yes. That's very true.
That's how brothers do it.
Yeah. So Bran is definitely developing a taste for this warging thing. He apparently, this particular jaunt lasted fully 3 days, which is extraordinary to me. Right. That they would have let him be passed out in the dark for 3 days. I mean, I guess the difference between passed out in the pitch black and not being passed out probably wasn't that great, but it does seem terribly dangerous for someone to be that long away from themselves.
I agree. Yeah, that's 3 days without food and water, aside from the dribble of water that Jojen said Mira poured into his mouth. He says he's having trouble speaking a little bit. He doesn't say it. He thinks in his head that his tongue feels thick in his mouth, and he thinks one day when I come back, I won't know how to talk anymore, which seems like quite the danger that you need to be aware of. That, maybe if you're too long in an animal's body, you forget how to be human, possibly.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Yeah. I like the writing here, by the way. I think that it does a good job of sort of melding the Summer and Bran experience, because the first part is all first person from Summer's perspective, but of course we know deep down that it's Bran.
Right. Yeah.
But when he starts to feel the pull of going back to the dark place, it's Bran's name that's being called, but Summer is resisting, even though we know that this is actually Bran thinking. He's resisting because he feels he is a wolf, that he doesn't belong there. That's a place for men,
I don't want to be Bran the Broken. I'd rather be Bran the Beastling. So, he doesn't want to go back to being the boy who can't walk when he can be this wolf, this fast predator, this agile, dangerous predator. He doesn't. You could understand how he wouldn't want to go back to being just a boy who can't walk anymore and needs help with such things.
Yeah, it is kind of like troubling though that he doesn't think I like being here. He thinks he is Summer. You know what I mean? It's more than just a choice. It's a kind of like a loosening of his grip on himself.
That is true. That's a good point. Yeah. And Jojen says, "Take care, Bran. Remember who you are." And Jojen's kind of been to this point like his de facto guide into, green dreams and being a warg and all that kind of supernatural type thing. So, and Bran wonders, why is he getting so worked up now? Before he was the one that was wanting me to do this stuff, and now he's telling me to, trying to bring me back. But
drug dealer's remorse, yeah.
So then, so Bran, while he's thinking about all this stuff, he thinks that he once even touched Ghost and talked to Jon, and he thinks, oh, but maybe that was just in a dream. And so either we've got a shared dream situation like Bran and Rickon did when Ned died. They both dreamed of Ned dying. Or they did truly meet in their dream because, you remember, Jon had that dream about meeting Weirwood Bran. And...
yeah, weirdly, I was blanking on where Jon saw Bran. But that's right, it was in a Weirwood, yes.
And actually it clears up this chapter clears up a few things we were unsure about in that Jon chapter. You remember when he was talking to Bran / the Weirwood, he smelled Wolf Tree Boy, which, we would have expected, but he also smelled warm earth, gray hard stone, death, and darkness.
Oh, so he was the crypt. Yeah.
Yes, we were concerned that maybe at that point I don't think we'd had it revealed to us yet that Bran wasn't actually dead, and we thought maybe that...
he was speaking to him from death, right?
Yes, right. Yes. Of course, we knew, but we didn't know at that point in the story, so we had to go on about this Bran not being dead thing. I think we were still on that point. But it also... I feel like there were some clues laid out for us about where Bran and Rickon were. I didn't pick up on them the first time that I read through, but as additional rereads and stuff, you have that what I just said there about smelling the earth and the death and the stone, but also in Jon 6, the previous one, when he captures Ygritte, she tells that tale of Bael the Bard and how Bael stole away with Lord Brandon Stark's daughter and returned a year later with the child having hidden in the crypts all that time.
Yeah. Imagine how you would have squinted when you opened the door after a year.
Yeah. One thing, just a little bit we got of this group down in the crypts, one thing it made me think about was, I think we even discussed it in that chapter, was that seems highly unlikely that you could live down there for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long they've been down there exactly, the Bran and company, but it hasn't been anywhere near a year.
Right. It was a legend of old, probably
Right.
some exaggeration. But if he came back with a baby, there was definitely a period of time, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It was a pretty significant amount of time. Although I was thinking, they could have maybe just gone down to deeper levels in the crypts. Maybe if you go down to like the very deepest level and way in the back, you can light as many torches as you want because no one ever goes down there. You could light it up like a dance club or something,
Well, maybe she was already pregnant when they went down there and they lost track of time and she just pretended it had been 9 months. Like, feels like it's only been a few weeks. Oh no, it's been 9 months. So Osha is hesitant to leave the crypts. She reminds them that the Squid Prince, Theon, if he catches hold of her, will strip the skin off her back. She says she's only got the one skin, right? And he'll strip it off her back.
In case you're trying to think of why exactly anybody, first of all, she pledged her loyalty to Theon when he first arrived and announced himself as Prince of Winterfell.
I always knew she was fibbing. I always knew it.
I know. Me too. But then he also believes that Osha killed Drennan. That was the one that he believed that she seduced because Drennan's pants were around his ankles. And also sent the wolves after Squint during their, what we thought was an escape, but really just pretend escape.
Right. But she probably did. I mean, to be fair to Theon, she probably did do those things. Yes.
I think his deductions were actually correct. But
right.
Yes. So the group is also huddled in Ned's empty tomb, and we've got the statue of his likeness there. We've got the statue of the wolf that sits at their feet like all the others, and the sword there, but there's no bones. So I thought people might want a refresher on where we stand with Ned's bones.
I think I know. I mean, this is not in the notes, so this is off memory. The bones have arrived at Riverrun. That's where they are.
They did, yes. So Tyrion, when he was sitting in the Iron Throne, he told Sir Cleos Frey, his cousin, that Ned's bones would be returned to the Starks at Riverrun as a show of good faith. When Cat got to Riverrun, the bones were there with the Silent Sisters in the castle.
Silent Sisters, right?
The chapter ended with her asking to be left alone with the remains, and then she tasked Hal Mullen with escorting them back to Winterfell. But we have since learned, obviously, the Victarion has taken Moat Cailin. So as we find the grave empty, no report of Hal making it to Winterfell, we have to wonder if he got stopped or possibly killed at Moat Cailin. And if so, now what's happened to Ned's bones?
Yeah. I mean, it is not inconceivable that he got past Moat Cailin before it was taken and it's just en route.
Yes.
Could be there any minute now. That could have blown things open for Bran and Rickon.
Yes.
Actually, I was thinking about Ned's statue. I think Ned's statue should have had 5 little direwolf pups around it. I think that would have been good because, I mean, like, he was the first Stark in forever to find direwolves, you know?
Right. 6, technically, if you count Ghost.
Oh, God, I lose track of how many kids there are. Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
And that's not my memory, that's my math, right there. Cool.
Yeah, that would be fun if they had instead of one large direwolf, there was a bunch of direwolf pups.
Yeah, because he didn't own a direwolf, but he did find,
right,
he was there when they found all these.
Yeah.
And it could also represent his children as well, of course,
Right. Yeah. I like it.
All 6 of them.
They might have been a little busy, I guess, with all the things going on, but someone should have proposed that idea. I blame that on Luwin. But there was when they're leaving, when they finally decide they're going to leave the crypts because Bran says it's total destruction up on the ground level, and Osha says, "Well, we're out of food anyway. I'll go check." And they're making their way to the stairs to go out of there. The torch starts, moving with them, so it's leaving things in the darkness as it leaves. And one of the last things that he sees is his father's statue, and he thinks there's sadness in Lord Eddard's eyes as if he didn't want them to go. And that, I was like, oof. It reminded me of that dream that I had about little Ethan at the top of the stairs that couldn't come with me out of the dream. And I was like, oh, don't leave him. Don't leave him down there.
I remember that dream too. Osha takes Ned's sword, Mira takes Rickon Stark's, and Bran takes Brandon's, his uncle Brandon, Ned's older brother, who would have been Lord of Winterfell were he not killed.
Right.
The Starks believe that the swords keep the restless spirits in the grave. So this has... Ned obviously isn't there to be kept. He's already restless. But Rickon and Brandon now are free to walk the earth again, presumably, because their swords have been taken.
The Starks can use any help that they can get at this point, so...
Yeah. I wonder how rusty those swords would be. Because
I was thinking about that too.
We mentioned when we first visited the crypts that the very oldest swords were just like lines of rust, nothing left of them, just but a rust mark. But these are 15 years old at least.
Well, Ned's is brand new, so Ned's should be fine.
Ned's is brand new, of course, yeah, but I did wonder about those other two.
Yes.
And Ned's is one of the very last, possibly the very last sword that Mickon made, and Mickon left his mark on it, as he would, and he was one of the people killed by Theon, or at Theon's hands when he arrived at Winterfell.
Yeah, he wouldn't stay quiet, and so he got run through with the spear. But, as they're walking through, first of all, while they're in the tomb, Rickon mentions a whole bunch of names of the tombs around him, which I'll actually get to in background. But as they're walking through...
A huge family tree they go through. A huge family tree.
Yes, and I was thinking...
Like more Starks than I've ever heard of before.
Maybe someday we'll ever get a Fire and Blood-like Stark anthology, because there's thousands of years to work with here.
It would be called Winter and Winter.
Winter and Blood. Winter and Wolves, how about that?
Winter is coming, and here it is.
That's perfect. Winter is coming. We'll just go with that.
Bran has, obviously, he's seen what's going on outside through the eyes of summer, and that intelligence gives them the confidence to try to get out. I got to think these days of sensory deprivation, we've already talked about this, the sensory deprivation must have been incredibly hard on them, particularly the children, and I include Hodor as one of the children. So I did a little bit of research, as I'm... charged with, and some of the known effects of this kind of being in complete darkness, and again they could have been lighting torches occasionally to sort of break the monotony, but can cause hallucinations, anxiety, and depression. Kids tend to bounce back, but given what they are about to emerge to, they could be a bit of a mess for a while, these kids.
Yes, and they emerge into quite a mess.
Right, exactly. If you came out of the sensory deprivation back to your comfortable life, that would be easier to get over than if you come out to find the only home you've ever known has been destroyed and everyone you know dead.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
In fact, it was destroyed to the point that when they got up there, Rickon was still whining about wanting to be taken home. He didn't even recognize it as Winterfell.
I will say, for the future, Hodor... his immense strength. I mean, basically, he's pushing this door open against like fallen rocks and gargoyles. There's a ton of debris outside the door. Could come in very handy. I mean, if he's going to be Bran's protector, it's good. I mean, he's a sweet and gentle person, but being very strong is a handy trait. Sure
is, and it's a dang good thing he was down there with them, or they might have been entombed themselves.
Right. So. We didn't really like Ramsay's decision to just burn Winterfell last time we talked about it, but it seems even stranger now. He burned the stores. Yeah. Winter really is coming. It's not just a saying. I mean, winter is on its way.
The White Ravens have been sent out. Winter is coming.
Right. I mean, he's young, right, Ramsay? I mean, he's kind of an age of Robb and Theon. That's kind of the age he is. So he doesn't really remember winter himself, but... you're from the north, you've got to have some sense that it's important to stock up. And, hey, maybe the Boltons are going to take over the north as the new, chief family of the north. They could use that food.
What you're referring to specifically is they mentioned that the fruit trees have been uprooted or left exposed to die, and the Great Hall is burned down, and basically anywhere that could have either provided someone with shelter or provided someone with food has been destroyed, including the stables were destroyed and all the horses killed. And I thought, why would you kill the horses? You could use those horses. You don't need to kill the horses. And Bran notices that Dancer was killed, and that's kind of a big deal because he can't just replace Dancer with any other horse. Dancer had to be specifically trained to work with Bran and his, his special way he has to control his reins and his saddle and stuff. So that's kind of a big deal. But then, like, Maester Luwin's entire turret is gone. So that is just not, it didn't come across as just like an afterthought type sacking, like burn some things on your way out. And, it was like a mass destruction of the castle that was concerted, time-consuming effort. What was the end game there? Like you said, maybe they want to replace the Starks as kings in the north. If so, why would you destroy such an important castle to the north?
Right. It's a place you could occupy. It's got it has warm walls that keep you alive in the winter.
In those warm walls, exactly. Those are pretty unique. They allow Winterfell to be able to make it through winters, these harsh northern winters, a lot better than a lot of the other castles that don't have such things.
I think you're kind of perhaps misunderstanding what they did. I think they were fairly wanton and fairly. They didn't really think it through. They just set fire to all the insides of the buildings, or at least the ones they could be bothered to walk to, left those fires burning. Some of them petered out, just having charred the walls. Some of them burned through important things that meant that things fell down. I think it was more like
the stone structure wasn't able to hold up because the floors fell
right. Yeah, some wooden beam that was holding things up got burned, and then stones fell. I think it was more like that than
like sledgehammers out and taking out walls.
Right, exactly. Yes. I don't think they did that.
I agree. But why not either take Winterfell for your own, or
right.
If the Dreadfort is more your fancy, then move a loyal bannerman into Winterfell. It's just.
Yeah.
Like you said, it came across like the leader, Ramsay, was a young, brash decision maker who had not enough foresight to see the strategic advantage to Winterfell as it was, And it can. Back in the last Theon chapter, when we were discussing whether or not Roose may have had some influence on Ramsay's efforts here to take Winterfell. There was things like saving the Frey boys, which would make sense as something that that Ramsay was instructed to do by his father. I cannot see Roose signing off on this one here, this mass destruction of Winterfell.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting point because it does, you're absolutely right. There's a thoughtfulness to the sparing the phrase. And because Roose seems to be tight with the phrase, it definitely suggests some communication. But, so, the question is Ramsay such a loose cannon that he does exactly what you tell him, and anything you don't tell him not to do, he'll just do.
Just make it up as he goes along.
Don't burn Winterfell and kill everyone. Oh, well. They didn't tell me not to.
Why didn't you tell me not to do that?
I thought Detective Osha did a good job of figuring out that this wasn't Theon's handiwork, that because Theon's horse was there, I think that was the biggest clue of all. The Dreadforts, the flayed man sigils lying around were useful too. I mean, something of an orgy of evidence to lead her to this, but bravo for spotting it.
Yeah, definitely a good sleuthing, as you say. It could have just been that the Dreadfort men were trying to defend Winterfell, and the Ironborn defeated them and fled.
Right. Yeah. But she came to the correct conclusion.
Right. She did.
I also think it's nice that the Godswood survive, and again, I think because of the way they set these fires, it made sense that the Godswood survives. These fires. Stone doesn't burn. I mean, it's not like the towers would be aflame. So some on the outskirts, but not a big. And presumably Winterfell's a fairly wet and wild place, so there wouldn't be it wouldn't go up like a California forest fire.
True. Yes, and so much of it is live forest that it would have taken quite the fire to get that going.
So nice that the Godswood survive, but not so nice what the boys find there, because, I mean, to see their beloved teacher dying on top of everything they've been through, and that's got to be incredibly hard on them. And now they're being sundered from one another on top of all that. I mean, this is just, it's emotional trauma on top of emotional trauma.
When one thing I thought of when I read this part is that Luwin was found at the pool next to the heart tree, which is a weirwood, and I thought, a man of science went to the weirwood tree, the heart tree in the Godswood, to die. And, the weirwood tree is like the central object of old god worship. So you wonder, was it that he thought kind of like there's no atheists in a foxhole? Like, I don't know if this works or not, but I'm going to go try my best to butter up these gods for whatever might be coming next. Or if he just thought it was a quiet, serene place to die.
Yeah. He's been there a long time. I mean, it's got to have rubbed off on him a little bit. He knew that Ned got a lot of solace from it. I bet it's a bit of all of that. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, that's true. But yes, you're right. It's terrible for the boys. I mean, everyone just keeps abandoning them, and none are coming back. And I guess maybe I'm just was a little emotional reading this chapter, but I just had trouble not blaming their parents. And I know why both of them left, and I know why neither has come back, but it's still, these were little kids, and they were just, like, left for, like, Sir Roderick and Maester Luwin will figure it out. We got things to do. And I get why they both left. I get why Ned left. I get why Cat left. And I get why they didn't come back. But it's just rough for the little kids.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yeah, tough choices.
Yes.
So one thing, I mean, it is nice that Luwin got to see the boys because, he said, I knew that the dead bodies were not the real boys, that they were somebody else. We know they were the miller's children.
Right.
But having it confirmed must have been a reassuring last moment. But this also clears up Luwin's role in the escape plan. He didn't have one. I mean, he was unaware. He did not know that this was going down, or at least he might have been aware it was happening, but he had no clue as to the nature of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He might have... It certainly doesn't seem like he was involved in the specific details, and it kind of comes across as he didn't know that it was happening at all. But if he did, he was only involved in the we're going to get you out of the castle. But, I don't know. Yeah. I'm starting to...
here's a bag of cheese.
Yes. But, this escape plan, what we learn in this chapter, what they tell us right here about what they did, going to the edge of the woods and then doubling back to the crypts and sending the wolves on ahead, that clears up some things from the Theon chapter, that when they were chasing the boys, remember that there were clear Hodor footprints leading up to the tree line, which now makes perfect sense why that was.
Right.
And then Theon thought it odd that Osha didn't cut any stakes from that elk that was killed in the path that they found, which would make sense because she wasn't there. None of them were there. And then Wex pointing out that there's no Hodor footprints going into the water. And, and then there's no footprints emerging from the stream up or down, whether they be wolf or human. And you have to assume that's because Bran was in Summer's body at that point and keeping them in the stream for much longer than a wolf might just do on his own,
Right. So they leave Luwin's body to the crows, which, I mean, I guess it's not the worst thing that's happened in this chapter, but it's unfortunate. They could have thrown him onto one of the burning fires, perhaps. But
yes, there was plenty of fires around to put his body on, but I guess they're in a hurry at this point.
Yeah, but Luwin hatches a plan with Osha to split up the boys. Doesn't feel there's many safe places left in the north. Perhaps the last hearth with the Umbers, but that's a schlep. the White Harbour with the Manderleys. Thinking back, Theon didn't see any Umbers present in Sir Roderick Cassell's force, so
Right.
that's maybe not such a good sign for them being Team Stark still. Maybe they are a long way away.
They are. Yeah, it's kind of weird that they weren't there, but it could be simply just that Roderick didn't think he needed to send for that far away. He didn't need that many men to retake this castle that he thought was being held by 50 people.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think. I've got to imagine that pretty much everybody in the North doesn't particularly like Roose Bolton and is still a Stark loyalist.
Yes,
but there are places that have fallen to third parties, or to Boltons, and they can no longer be trusted. Those places, but I would still trust just about every family that isn't a Bolton.
Yeah, and the Great John Umber is one of Rob's staunchest supporters, so you would think the Umbers in general would be as well.
Yeah.
And then the other option is White Harbor, which there were plenty of White Harbor men present here that were killed by the Bolton men. But, White Harbor is it's a largish city, so maybe there's more men left there that can protect Rickon if they go that route.
Yeah. So Osha and Rickon are going to go east through the East Gate to the King's Road and head south on the King's Road, right? I mean, it wasn't actually stated, I don't think, but that was the assumption because if they were heading north,
stated. Yeah, they could. There was basically two options that were mentioned: White Harbor or the Umbers. One's north, one's south.
But if they're going north to the Umbers, then they're going the same direction as Bran to the wall, right? So
true.
I mean,
just
they aren't splitting up. Yeah,
they both meet at Castle Black. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Osha and Rickon are going out the East Gate to the King's Road, and Bran and the Reeds and of course Hodor are going out the Hunter's Gate. And they are going to go as vaguely as Jojen says, north. So that's a lot of direction that they could go north. And, I'm wondering if maybe going north is related to that dream that Bran had when he was falling with the three-eyed crow, and he was seeing all the things all around the world, and one of the things he saw in the very far north, was something terrible, and the crow said, "Now you see why you have to live." So maybe there's something in his destiny that requires him to have to go north to deal with whatever that is, or be involved in some way.
Yeah. And one other option, which didn't really get mentioned, but in Theon 4, Luwin said that the Crannog men will make life a living hell for Victarion's men at Moat Cailin. But of course, because of the way things have fallen out here, the Howland Reed's children are, to the best of his knowledge, captives of the Ironborn at Winterfell.
Right.
And so that could make him less prone to defend. I mean, I can't imagine it would, just given what a Stark loyalist he would be, but it's got to be playing on his mind. I mean, you saw how Roderick Cassell was when his own daughter was threatened. He stayed the course. I'm sure Howland Reed would too, but it's got to be a bit of a concern to him. If they were to go south and get to Howland Reed, he would at least know they were safe and he could, fight freely.
Yes, and Greywater Watch would be a fantastic place to hide out because nobody can figure out where it is unless you happen to be a Cranogman.
Right.
So, it'd be a good place to wait it out. It's also the part of the problem is you have to get past Moat Cailin to get to it. And
right, but you feel like the Reeds could get them around.
Yes,
Moat
I agree.
Cailin without
yes, they might know some paths. So you get past Moat Cailin and you get to Greywater Watch. Now you could hide out there until Rob's force decides to come north, and then you could join up with Rob and Kat if that's the route they end up taking. So yeah, it certainly has merit to it. And when Bran said, "Are we going to Greywater Watch? We're going to go to your home," and Mira looks for Jojen for an answer, she must be thinking, say yes, say yes, say yes. I want to go home.
We're not even going to check in with Mr. Prophecy here. Yes, we're going. So as Bran leaves and looks back on Winterfell, it's a slightly encouraging end note that the Winterfell's roots are deep and all those Stark ancestors, good and bad, are here. A bit of fire damage doesn't end their reign in the north. They can live to fight another day, rebuild.
Right. Yeah, and the very last thing this is like the last thing that Bran is looking at as he's being carried away on Hodor's back, and he thinks it's broken. Winterfell's broken like I am. It's not dead, just like I'm not dead. And, and he says as long as those kings of the winter are buried under Winterfell, it will always be, it will always be the Starks. And that, we know that the Starks always believe there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. And of course, now there's no Stark in Winterfell. But I'm wondering what Bran is thinking about there. Indicates that the message is misunderstood. And maybe it's not there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Maybe it's rather there will always be a Stark in Winterfell because the Stark Kings of Winter and lords and everyone else are buried in those crypts underneath,
right there.
Like roots of a tree.
Yeah, good point. So maybe no matter who occupies it or how desolate it becomes, the Starks are still there in spirit. And,
right.
And they'll be back. They'll be back. I don't believe this is the end for Winterfell.
That's right. Well, the Stark family was basically founded, like the earliest traces with Bran the Builder. And now we've got Bran the Broken. So... there's a bit of a parallel in some ways there. Started with Bran the Builder, it's ended with Bran the Broken. But
and Winterfell parallels. It was built, now it's broken.
Maybe Bran the Broken will need to rebuild Winterfell as Bran the Builder did.
Very nice, very nice. All right, do you have some background for us?
I did. I put together some. So... when Osha lights a small fire and Bran can see many of the tombs around them when they're sitting in Ned's empty tomb, he sees Ned, Lyanna, Brandon, Rickard, Edwyle, Willem, Artos, Donner, Baron, Rodwell, Jonel, Barth, Brandon, and Cragen. So there's
And Blitzen.
Yes, and Blitzen. So I thought I'd just quickly go down through who they are and how they're related to each other. So we'll start at the end. We'll start with Cragen, as he is the oldest in this list, and work our way to Ned and Lyanna and Brandon. So we've talked about Cragen Stark before. One of his nicknames was the Wolf of the North, and he did a short stint as Hand of the King to Aegon III after the Dance of the Dragons. And Bran had mentioned that Cragen fought Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, and that Aemon the Dragon Knight said he'd never faced a finer swordsman. But then Jonel succeeded Cragen as Lord of Winterfell, and Jonel was Cragen's sixth child, but his second son. His first son, Cragen's first son, Rickon, died in Sunspear during Daeron I's attempt to conquest Dorne. Jonel had 2 wives, but no kids. So when Jonel died, Lord of Winterfell passed over his younger brother Edric and all of Edric's heirs to their next youngest brother, Barthagen. So there's no explanation why they skipped Edric. Maybe he was dead, but all his heirs and everyone were skipped. So Barthagen becomes the next Lord of Winterfell, and his nickname is Barth Blacksword. And he was killed when the Skagasi rose up against Winterfell. This was back during the reign of Daeron II. He also had no children. So then the youngest of Cragen's sons, Brandon, succeeded Barth as Lord of Winterfell. And so Brandon married a woman named Alice Karstark. They did have 3 kids, so they ended the no kids streak there. It's amazing how long this line of Starks go back with how few people have kids. But he also had an affair with a woman named Willa Fenn, and that produced a son named Lionel Snow, who was actually Brandon's oldest child. But anyway, when he died, Rodwell, Brandon's oldest legitimate son, succeeded him as Lord of Winterfell. And guess what? He had no kids.
No kids. Right.
So when he died, his younger brother Bran succeeded him. You could go down the line and you can see the names that Bran is mentioning here. So Bran, much against his name,
I see where you're going here. That's good.
broke that childless streak and had 7 kids. He died fighting when he teamed up with the Lannisters to fight the Ironborn in...
I don't know who I would cheer for in this fight.
I know, right? And his oldest son, Donner, succeeded him. And, of course, he had no kids. These Starks, I don't know. You'd think it's cold up there. There's not a lot else to do. Have some kids. So his younger brother, Willem, followed him as Lord of Winterfell. And Willem died fighting a king beyond the wall named Raymond Greybeard. Not Greybeard, named Raymond Redbeard. But Willem's brother Artus revenged his death by killing Raymond. And now we're into Old Nan's lifetime, because the Brandon that she was likely hired to be the wet nurse for was a son of Willem. And of course, that son died at age 3, so he did not obviously succeed Willem as Lord of Winterfell. Instead, it was his son Edwyle who succeeded him, and that's Ned's grandfather.
Okay.
And Edwyle married a woman named Marna Locke, and they had Ned's father Rickard. Only one son, but at least they had a child.
Managed it, yeah.
And Rickard married his cousin Lyanna Stark, and they had Brandon, Ned, Lyanna, and Benjen. And you remember Rickard was burned alive in King's Landing by King Aerys.
Wow. There's a lot of Starks.
Indeed.
But actually, not as many as there should be, frankly.
If a few of them would have kids, there'd be a lot more. It's a big open territory up there. Build some castles, put some kids in
Fill it up with Starks. So in comparison with the television show, this is all captured pretty well. And I've said a bunch of times that the Reeds have not been added to the TV show yet, so they're missing. It's just Osha, Hodor, and the boys in the crypt, the door of which opens inwards, so it was not blocked, which is kind of smart, actually.
Why did they think of that ahead of time?
Osha leads them out, and Bran, not having just walked, is nervous that she's making a mistake. The wolves, who just pop back up as if they've been milling around the whole time, kind of weirdly, you know. When you think about it, it didn't seem weird. And then I was watching, I was like, well, where have they been while they've been hiding in the crypts?
Right.
I thought they should have been in the crypts with them, perhaps. That would have made sense. Because the whole tracking them was kind of like not really very well, you know, captured. So it was like, why not just have the wolves with the boys? Anyway, I'm off topic. My notes made me laugh then. So the wolves lead them to Luwin, as they do in the book, but he has Osha take them both north to Jon. He asks for a quick death, and then the scene ends with the 4 of them, plus the 2 wolves, heading north with Winterfell burning in the background. So
Okay. So they're specifically heading to Jon.
To Jon. That was what Luwin told them.
Jon would be like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Brother of the Night's Watch. Pedantry. My only pedantry here is, don't you think that if you were in the crypts under a castle that was on fire, you might notice?
I've read your notes here, so I get your logic. So yes, it does make sense. But explain to us all, please.
Well, I mean, it just feels like if there's a fire raging above you, then you would feel the heat, you'd hear it, you'd certainly feel the air being pulled out, I would think.
You'd probably smell actually, it too, right? You'd think some smoke might have filtered down in there.
All of those things. And Summer, when Bran and Summer are walked together, he mentions the earth leaping when one of the towers collapsed. Oh. So you definitely you'd feel that under the ground as well, you know?
Right, yes, definitely would feel that, you would think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also read it's a very dangerous place to go in a fire because you can suffocate because of the air being pulled out, you know.
Oh, good point. Yeah, good point. My only thing was, so Bran asks how long he was gone, how long he had been warged into summer, and Jojen says 3 days. And maybe there's logical explanation for how he knew it'd been 3 days, but I would think in complete darkness, you would lose track of days coming and going.
Right.
And
total exaggeration by Jojen.
Maybe he meant 3 sleeps, like little kids do.
Right, yes. Yeah. But he's napping every 20 minutes, so it's only been 2 hours. You know?
Right. So, yeah, I just wondered, how do you figure that out?
Give me some news and notes.
News and notes, not much today, but Kit Harington's new role sounds a lot more like Gregor Clegane than it does Jon Snow. As Harrington has signed on to play Frankenstein's monster in a new movie titled Mary's Monster. The movie focuses on author Mary Shelley's life and state of mind as she writes her famous novel. And Mary Shelley will be played by Danish actress Clara Rugard.
Our special episode with Elio Garcia and Linda Antonsen drops next week for our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers, and the following week for everyone else. We're going to leak some clips, right?
Yes, I've been pulling just little snippets together just so people can get an idea of the things we talk about. So by the time you're hearing this, I might have already dropped 1 or 2, but I will be throughout the next week or so.
If, dear listener, you enjoy it half as much as me and Mackelly, you are going to really enjoy it, because we had an absolute blast. They were truly amazing to talk to. It was really something special.
Yes, and there's been talk on the Discord server of the excitement to hear
good.
it. So Shoe Queen specifically says she's just waiting with anticipation. So.
Good. Just a week to wait. Okay. And as Mackelly said earlier, we're going to take a couple of weeks off just to recover our equilibrium.
Yes, we got 81 chapters to do in Storm of Swords. So
I've decided to dust the house for the first time in 2 years. That's one thing I'm going to do.
Ethan came home earlier this week. Actually, it was Sunday night, I think it was, because he had a cough, and he was thinking that maybe his apartment was so dusty that he had developed a cough because of it. It turned out he had strep throat.
Well, yeah.
But he's like, I think my apartment is so dusty that I've actually developed a cough from it. Yeah, but it probably was dusty enough to do that, but it turned out he actually had strep throat.
All right, let's conclude this one. So Bran and Rickon are alive, and they have their direwolves, which, I mean, look, they're in the wind like everybody else now, but they've got their direwolves, and neither of their sisters have that advantage.
That's true, yes.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Bran has gone from pretty much being almost embarrassed about warging. Remember, he was so embarrassed when Jojen was bringing it up that it caused Summer to attack the Reeds. So he's gone from that to fully embracing it to the point of almost becoming dangerous that he might starve or forget how to speak. So we've seen quite the change in his attitude toward it recently. But I guess when you're stuck in the darkness,
Yeah. Yeah. I can't walk and I'm stuck in the dark. I might as well go see what's going on in Wolf World.
Right.
And also, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, this journey is somewhat perilous for them. It'll be interesting to see if this ability aids them on the journey. One would assume that it could.
Right. Especially if they need to track down food or something.
Right. Exactly. As I was going to say the same thing. I could not track food to save my life, but if I happened to be a direwolf, I'm imagining I could catch a rabbit.
I'm not sure a rabbit will do for all of them, but, catch a few rabbits.
Yes. I think Osha will be a good caretaker for Rickon, and she at least won't forget him. I think that's why they've split up. Because in a big party, it would be easy to lose Rickon, but it's just... She's riding Shaggy Dog. She's like, I've forgotten something.
So speaking of that, we've got Bran's POV, so likely we'll have his experience coming up, but are we maybe going to get an Osha or a Rickon POV so we can keep an eye on what they're up to?
Interesting. Interesting. So I think it's good news for Rickon. I think Osha's going to be a good caretaker. I am less keen on Jojen as a caretaker because Jojen has this is not how I die mentality to anything that is not the moment when he's going to die, which is extraordinarily dangerous.
It sure is. Yes.
I mean, nobody should know the moment of their death because it would make them a lunatic. You know, they would be like, woohoo!
I don't die here. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I won't die, so...
Yeah, that's right. You all might. One thing I do know about my death, I'm all alone. You lot aren't there.
They're like, do you see us all surrounding you and holding your hand? Oh no, I'm by myself.
Oh, no.
I think
so the boys had no choice but to leave. The home's been destroyed. The hands were forced. So all the Starks now are basically homeless. I mean, the only Stark who's actually sort of in a permanent residence is, Sansa.
Yes.
Has a all too permanent residence, but I was going to say Catelyn is at least in her original family home.
True. Yes, she's in the safest position of all the Starks right now.
Right. Yes. So they don't know it yet, but the heart has been torn out of the family. You know, they've lost their home. The one thing that they could have done here was all head back to Winterfell and meet up again, but now it's gone. Yeah.
But it's not that, like I said in the background, I think of the last Theon chapter. It's not the first time Winterfell has been sacked and burned. It's not even the first time it's been done so by Boltons. So they can rebuild and recover. But first of all, they're going to need to fight their way back to it. And secondly, winter is coming. So would there be time to rebuild Winterfell properly? Certainly would not be enough time to regrow the food and supplies needed. So that could all be problematic.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about it. We're ending A Clash of Kings with a Bran chapter. And we began our story, aside from the prologue of A Game of Thrones, with the Bran chapter. And I was just thinking of, how long we've come between these two Bran chapters. Not just Bran's story, but the whole story. And yet we're only 2/5 of the way through the existing books, so...
Which is not the whole story.
Right, we got a whole lot more to go from here.
Yeah. But yes, I see in the notes here, as you say, if the first two books are anything to go by, there's quite a bit of carnage awaiting us.
Yes. Yes. That seems... Unless the story takes a drastic turn, that seems like what we might be headed for here.
So... let's conclude the whole book as well. As you said, we've made our way through 2/5 of the book. It took us a while to get through all this. We started on January 18th, 2021.
That's right.
And we're now in May of 2022, so that's a schlep.
Yes.
It has been a
rewarding journey through this book.
Oh, yeah, for sure rewarding. Yeah, absolutely. What are the themes of this? I mean, the stupidity of man, perhaps.
Yes, that'd be a good way to sum it up. I think...
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yes. Go on. I was going to say something about that, but go on. Finish your thought.
That was the end of my thought.
Oh, yes, I agree. I mean, destruction, chaos in the face of the impending winter, yet no heed paid to the fact that now no one's got any food.
Right.
Right. Or people don't have the proper shelter either.
Right. The one time in history when you need to pull together as a society is the time that they all break apart and do this to each other.
Yes.
So,
and if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's thought that long, hard winters follow long summers, and we've just had one of the longest in memory. So this is expected to be a really rough winter, and they're treating it like it's no big deal.
And I'm not just worried about the sort of temperature of the winter. This is also the dead are rising north of the wall type winter.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
You don't get those every winter.
I wondered if all of this is the effects of there being no adult in the room in King's Landing, and it's being seen throughout the realm. We start with Ned's capture and death, continue with no serious negotiations with Robb when Tyrion just gave a bunch of ridiculous demands back, and the degrading conditions in King's Landing to the point of riot, and they would have lost the throne entirely if not Tywin and Mace Tyrell hadn't come in at the right time. Yeah.
But Tywin is an adult now in the Red Keep.
Yes.
And he could right the ship. I don't see him as a force for good, just FYI. He's a mean-spirited monster. But he could right the ship. I mean, he won't let the the kingdom go to seed the way that Cersei would, and certainly the way that Joffrey would. You know, he's a planner and a fixer, and he's going to get things straight, I think.
Right.
But it might be too late. Certainly, the further north you go, the more too late it is.
Right. Yeah. The Reach and parts of the Stormland, they might be fine for a while. Dorne,
Right.
Dorne's probably mostly unaffected by all this.
Right.
The North, they're in a big pickle here.
Yeah. And although it was in this chapter, it is kind of like a good summary of the book, where what Maester Luwin said with his final words. He said, "Each man against his neighbour and winter coming. Such folly, such black, mad folly."
Yep. Perfect. I wonder if that was thrown in right here in the last pages of this book, because it perfectly sums up what's going on at this point in the story, and basically this book in general.
So let's re-summarize where all of our characters are, shall we? We'll take these one by one.
Yeah.
I'll take Catelyn Stark, as I said, using only the power of my memory. She is in Riverrun, in the Riverlands, with her dying father, Hoster. She's traversed Westeros in search of allies with very little luck. She saw the terrifying power that Stannis is capable of and the ends he's willing to use it towards. She's stuck now in Riverrun with no means of advising Robb, and now Moat Cailin has been taken. She doesn't have any way back to the north, so no way of finding the boys. So that's her predicament.
Yep. And we've got Robb. He's still in the west, and seems like the reports we're getting is he's kicking butt over there. So,
Right.
But now with Tywin on the Iron Throne and Robb loose in the west, would Tywin consider settling for peace? You know, actual, real peace negotiation terms here, because yes, he has secured the Iron Throne, but Robb is running amok in his homeland. So maybe now will be a good time to be like, okay, let's just everyone calm down here. Let's see what we can do.
And that could be a two-way street as well, because given Robb's successes, but now given Tywin's success, it might be a good time for Robb to settle for peace as well.
Right.
You know, give you back the Westlands as long as I can keep the North and the Riverlands, and then that gives him an opportunity to go deal with the Ironborn.
Right.
Jon has been captured by the wildlings north of the wall, but has convinced them for now that he is a traitor to the Night's Watch by killing Quarren Halfhand. Jon does have a tendency to find strong mentors. Maybe he's going to find one amongst the wildlings.
Oh, maybe.
Or maybe he's just going to find a lady friend amongst Ygritte.
That also seems possible. Sansa's, she's still captive in King's Landing, but at least she's no longer betrothed to Joffrey. Cheers for that. News. She's been much more mature in A Clash of Kings. And I found her chapters much more tolerable in A Clash of Kings than the young head in the clouds Sansa from A Game of Thrones. It just, if I had hair, maybe would make me want to pull it out. So, you know. Okay. But Donta says he's going to get her out here coming up at Joff and Marjorie's wedding. We'll see how that plays out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Arya has now escaped from Harrenhal, where she was working as a servant, with Gendry and Hot Pie in tow. She's probably fared worst of the Stark family through this book. She's been beaten, enslaved, starved, basically right on the cusp of death constantly. But Arya is nothing if not resilient.
That she is, yeah. And you know, we've spent about the past hour talking about Bran and what he's up to, but he's headed north from Winterfell with the Reeds and Hodor. You know, like, I'm sure we've mentioned this in this episode here, but you know, he's had basically continued loss since this story started. He's now been stripped to nothing but Hodor. Hodor and Summer are about the only things that he has that he's bringing with him from Winterfell. You know, he's got the Reeds, but he just met the Reeds. So, but his warging abilities are on the rise. So, you know, that's one silver lining there, I guess.
Rickon is headed somewhere with Osha, possibly White Harbour. It's unclear exactly where. We wish him well and hope that we get a POV from one of the two of them.
That would be pretty neat, I think. And Theon, he seemingly has been captured by Ramsay Snow, Roose Bolton's son. And where is he? he didn't seem to be in Winterfell. His body wasn't there that they saw. So is he headed to the Dreadfort? I guess we'll find out. But, he started A Clash of Kings so confidently with so much bravado and coupled with so much naivety. And, he rushed into doing everything. He just wanted to so quickly become his father's heir and just wanted to so quickly be respected in the Iron Islands by the Ironborn. And, then he rushed into taking Winterfell. And he's basically made every possible mistake that he could make. He started this book in the best possible place that he could be, and he ended it in just about the worst possible place.
Yep. Tyrion Lannister, he's badly wounded in King's Landing. He's been stripped of his office and influence. It's been a roller coaster for him, this book. So the highest of highs when he was Hand of the King. He fell in love. He sat the Iron Throne. All of that has crashed down now, and he's back to not even square one.
Right, and we've got some non-POV characters. We can just go through them pretty quickly, I guess. Right, we got Tywin is in. He's in King's Landing now as Hand of the King.
Cersei is Queen Regent in King's Landing still.
Jaime, he is still captive of the Starks at Riverrun.
Joffrey Baratheon, first of his name, is still stinking up the Iron Throne.
Marcella may or may not be in Dorne by now, depending on how her boat excursion is going.
She's cruising the Isles. Tommen is still in Rosby for safekeeping. Presumably he's going to be invited back to King's Landing now that King's Landing has been secured.
Good point. We've got Lord Varys. He's in King's Landing doing the mysterious stuff that he tends to do. So yeah, we'll see.
And Peter Baelish is indeed back in King's Landing as well. So probably scheming something.
Yes. Podrick Payne. He's in Tyrion's good books. He's basically saved his life. So, it's always good to save the life of your boss.
Sir Bronn, has been knighted for his efforts in defense of King's Landing. And
Shay, she still seems to be, we would guess, Lolly's handmaiden. So I guess she's doing all right. But can she go back to her manse now? Now that the threat of war is over?
No, she needs to stay where she is. She needs to, especially if Tyrion's incapacitated. The only way to see him is by staying in.
That is true. Yes.
It would be weird for a servant to leave King's Landing, leave the Red Keep to go to her manse.
Right.
Questions would be asked.
Yes. Good point.
Yeah. Alayaya, she probably is still a captive of Cersei. That makes me worried for her. It makes me want to read the next book quicker to get her out of that.
Right, yes. We'll do 2 chapters a week. No, we will not do 2 chapters a week. We're barely getting 1 in these days. King Stannis, first of his name, he's unaccounted for, but he was badly defeated here at King's Landing in the Battle of the Blackwater, and no one seems to know where he's gone. The only person we've heard even mention him was Sir Dantas, and he said, I don't know, dead, fled, who cares? I don't know where he is. Yeah.
And Stannis' right-hand man, Davos Seaworth, was, last time we saw him, adrift in the Blackwater, possibly dead by now. He was an enjoyable new POV character, so I hope he's okay. He was self-effacing, and die-hard Stannis supporter. Let's hope he is a die-hard, because we don't want him to have died.
Right, yes. Melisandre, she was shipped back to Dragonstone, which seems like might have been folly now in hindsight, but it is what it is. Yeah. She's working on her I told you so's for when Stannis gets back there.
So she should. The Tyrells have hitched their wagon to the Lannisters, including Margaery betrothed to Joffrey. Crazy.
And Roose Bolton he's in Harrenhal, sullying. Oh, you wrote this one. It made me laugh. Roose Bolton is in Harrenhal sullying King Rob's reputation because everything he says is by order of the king, but none of it is by order of the king.
And laying it all at his feet. Lord Commander Geo Mormont of the Night's Watch is waiting at the Fist of the First Men for news from the Frostfangs with Samwell, Ed, and company.
That's quite the alliteration you had going on there.
It was.
Benjen Stark, unfortunately, is still missing, presumed dead north of the wall.
Mance Rayder is now marching on the wall, having quit his Frostfang redoubt.
And then, last but certainly not least, we get Dany. She has 3 ships to take her and her dragons to Magister Illyrio Mopatis and Pentos, and Arstan Whitebeard and Strong Belwas are now her new companions. So that's progress, I guess, finally.
Yep. And Ser Jorah Mormont is still firmly in the friend zone.
Yes, he is. So why don't you run through who we've lost? Let's do
so
in memoriam here.
Yes, and back in the day, we used to in memoriam everyone who died,
right.
But it's just become too much of a task. You know, we can't face it. So we'll do a book roundup, and believe me, I researched this. This is the tip of the iceberg. There are a ton more deaths than this. These are the key characters who've died in A Clash of Kings.
Right.
Maester Cresson was first to go back in the prologue.
Oh yes, he was right
at his own hand. Baby Barra. Baby Barra was murdered, remember?
Sweet Baby Barra, yeah. Yep.
Doreah, one of Daenerys' handmaidens, she died in the Red Wastes.
Yep.
Yoren, who got Arya out of King's Landing.
Another solid minor character lost.
Exactly, yeah. Lummy Greenhands, who really just talked himself into getting killed.
He was trying to get killed, I think.
Yeah, he really was. King Renly Baratheon, ? He has recently been seen alive again, but we're pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah, he hasn't showed up since.
No,
since he was seen alive on the battlefield.
Sir Stafford Lannister, who is Tywin's cousin.
Right.
He was killed at the hands of Robb Stark's forces in the west. Sir Courtney Penrose, if you remember, was the Castellan of Storm's End, and he was the second victim of Stannis' shadow demon.
Yes, right.
Lady Donella Hornwood, the first victim of Ramsay Snow.
Oof. That was terrible.
Ramsay Snow's sidekick, Reek, who died by being dressed up as Ramsay Snow in Ramsay Snow's place, and Ramsay Snow took on the persona of Reek for a while until he didn't anymore.
Seems to be a theme around Ramsay Snow. People dying.
Yep. Mikken the Smith of Winterfell. Farlan, the Master of Hounds at Winterfell.
Yep.
Davos' sons. I think that might go overlooked. I think at least 3 of Davos' sons were killed in the Battle of the Blackwater.
Right.
So,
yep.
Sir Mandon Moore at the hands of the fierce fighter Podrick Payne. Sir Roderick Cassell, Castellan of Winterfell, is no more. Corin Halfhand, nobly giving his life to make Jon Snow look like a bad guy. Well, a bad guy to us. I mean, a good guy to the wildlings.
Right. Depending on your perspective. Yeah, I guess so.
Pala and Old Nan are both missing in action, but it just seems like not many people escaped from Winterfell, so we're worried for them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like Old Nan was, gonna get herself out of there. Fleet of foot enough to escape. Yes,
the
exactly.
fires, yes. And last, but by no means least, Maester Luwin.
Aw, poor Maester Luwin.
Yeah.
Good man, that one.
It's rough to lose these guys. All right. There are 3 ways that you can help us. You can leave us a review. It helps to spread the word. You can buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us an Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. And you can even become a sustainer there, and we thank those who already have.
That's right, we sure do. And you can always reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.